The morning sunlight poured gently through the high windows of the Forrester mansion, casting long amber streaks across the polished floors, gilded frames, and silent portraits that watched over generations of triumph and tragedy. For a house that had seen so much love and betrayal, this particular morning felt unusually still, almost deceptive in its calm. Brooke Forrester moved quietly through the corridors, her mind elsewhere, her heart unburdened by suspicion, until the faint murmur of Ridge's voice drifted from his study. At first, she didn't mean to listen. Ridge often took calls early, discussing fabrics, partnerships, design revisions, all the endless details of Forrester creations. But something in his tone stopped her mid-step. It was not the steady confidence of a man in control. It was low, strained, trembling at the edges with something she had rarely heard in him before: fear. She stood frozen, one hand lightly touching the doorway as his voice became clearer. He wasn't speaking to a business partner. He was speaking to a doctor, not just any doctor, but one of the most well-known neurologists in Los Angeles. The name alone made Brooke's stomach tighten. She could only catch fragments, progressing faster than expected, motor decline, creative function impairment. No effective reversal yet, but the meaning was unmistakable. Ridge was ill. Fatally, perhaps. Her breath caught in her throat as he asked in a whisper, "How long before it shows?" The pause on the other end was too long, and when Ridge finally exhaled, she knew he already understood the answer. He wasn't fighting an ordinary illness. He was facing something that would steal the very essence of who he was, his artistry, his genius, his control. When the call ended, Brooke stumbled backward into the hallway, her hand pressed to her mouth. Her heart pounded, as if her body were trying to make sense of the chaos her mind refused to accept. Ridge? The man who had built empires out of imagination and confidence. The man who could command a room with a single sketch or a glance. How could he, of all people, be fading from within? She leaned against the wall, trying to breathe. It all began to fit together. The erratic moods, the sudden bursts of anger, the way he had forced Eric into early retirement under the pretense of protecting him. Brooke had thought it was ambition or ego, but now she saw the truth. It was desperation. Ridge had needed to hide his weakness, to preserve the illusion of strength even as his mind betrayed him. When she finally gathered the courage to confront him, Ridge was sitting by the drafting table, his hands trembling slightly as he held a pencil. The sketches before him were beautiful, intricate, bold, but unfinished, their lines trailing off into uncertainty. He didn't notice her at first. He was lost in thought, the pencil hovering uselessly above the page. When Brooke softly said his name, he startled. The pencil slipped from his fingers and rolled across the floor. For a fleeting second, the mask of composure dropped, and she saw the panic in his eyes before he turned away. "I heard you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "The call. The doctor." Ridge froze. He didn't ask what she had heard, only how much she knew. "Brooke," he began, his tone low and measured, but it carried an exhaustion that betrayed him. "It's nothing for you to worry about. I'm fine." "Don't lie to me," she said, stepping closer. "You're sick, Ridge. I heard everything. A degenerative neurological disorder. That's what he said, isn't it? You've been hiding this from me." He sighed, running a hand through his hair, his eyes darting toward the window as if he could escape through it. "It's under control," he muttered, though even as he said it, his hand shook again. "I can manage it." "Manage it." Her voice rose, trembling with disbelief. "You're falling apart, and your idea of managing it is pushing your father out of his own company to cover for you?" Her words landed like blows, and Ridge flinched. For a moment, neither spoke. The truth hung between them, raw and unbearable. Brooke's eyes filled with tears as she reached for him. "You can't fight this alone. There are treatments, options. Please, Ridge, you have to let someone help you." He shook his head, stepping back, his expression a mixture of pride and terror. "No. I won't be pitted. I won't become another man carried by the Forrester name while the world whispers behind his back. Eric deserves his peace. I'll handle this. Handle it? Brooke's voice cracked. You're hiding behind control because you're afraid of what happens when you lose it. You think if no one sees your weakness, it won't be real. But it is, Ridge. It's happening. Ridge turned away, his shoulders tightening. The silence in the room was suffocating. Finally, he said almost to himself, I built Forrester on vision, on instinct. When that goes, what am I? What's left? Brooke's tears spilled freely. You're still Ridge. You're still the man I love. But Ridge only shook his head. You love the man I was, not the one I'm becoming. That night, as darkness spread over Los Angeles, Brooke lay awake beside him, listening to the shallow rhythm of his breathing. Her heart ached for him, for his pride, his fear, his impossible silence. She wanted to scream, to tell the whole family, to make them see what he was hiding. But she knew he would see it as betrayal. So she did what she always did. She carried the weight alone. Over the next few days, Brooke began to see the signs everywhere. Ridge's hand trembling when he signed documents, his hesitation during design meetings, the way his speech sometimes faltered when he grew tired. He was hiding it well, too well, but to her, every detail was another crack in the facade. The other Forresters noticed nothing, too preoccupied with Eric's retirement and the company's transition. Brooke tried to keep her composure, but every time Ridge forced a confident smile or dismissed a mistake as exhaustion, she felt her heart splinter further. At Forrester Creations, the atmosphere grew tense. The staff whispered about changes, deadlines missed, designs revised at the last minute, decisions postponed without explanation. Ridge avoided long discussions, relying increasingly on Steffi to handle the business side. She was proud to step up, but even she began to sense that something wasn't right. When she showed her father a set of sketches and saw his hand hover over the paper without moving, she felt a flicker of unease. Brooke watched helplessly as Ridge buried himself deeper in denial. Every attempt she made to reach him was met with resistance, sometimes anger, sometimes silence. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, she found him standing alone in the studio, staring at the unfinished collection pinned to the wall. They're missing something, he murmured. The spark. The flow. It's slipping. His voice trembled, almost childlike. Brooke stepped closer, tears stinging her eyes. Then let someone help you find it again. Don't fight this alone. But Ridge only smiled, that hollow, heartbreaking smile that always came before he pushed her away. I can't afford to fall apart, Brooke. Not now. Not when everyone's watching. The distance between them grew until even their home felt like a battlefield of silence. Brooke tried to keep their secret, but the burden became unbearable. She confided in Bridget one night, unable to hold it in any longer. Bridget, both doctor and daughter, listened in stunned disbelief. Neurological degeneration? She repeated softly. How long has he known? Months, Brooke whispered. Maybe longer. He said it's rare, and there's no cure. He's terrified, Bridget. He's trying to control it by controlling everything else, even his father's retirement. Bridget's face hardened. Then someone has to intervene. If he keeps pushing himself, he'll collapse or worse. But Brooke shook her head. If I betray his trust, I'll lose him completely. And if I don't, I might lose him anyway. The following week, Ridge's symptoms worsened. He began forgetting things small at first, then more noticeable. A meeting rescheduled twice. A sketch misplaced. A pattern drafted backward. Each mistake gnawed at him, feeding his fear. When Eric visited unannounced, Ridge forced his usual charm, showing new designs and pretending everything was fine. But Eric's eyes, wise, perceptive, caught the subtle tremor in his son's hands. You're tired, he said gently. Ridge laughed it off, but inside, panic flared. He couldn't let his father see. Not now. Not ever. That night, after Eric left, Ridge lashed out. At himself, at the world, at Brooke for caring too much. You think love will fix this? He snapped when she tried to comfort him. It won't. I don't need pity. I need control. Control is killing you, she said quietly. He turned away, his breath ragged. Then let it. The word struck her like a slap. For days, they barely spoke. Brooke walked through the mansion like a ghost, haunted by the man she loved but could no longer reach. The company thrived on the surface, but beneath the glamour, uncertainty spread like a silent infection. Investors grew restless, employees anxious. And through it all, Ridge continued his charade, the brilliant designer at the helm of a dynasty, even as his mind began to betray him piece by piece. One evening, Brooke found him collapsed at his desk, his sketchbook open, the pencil slipping from his weakened hand. Panic surged through her as she rushed to his side. He tried to stand, but his coordination faltered. "Don't call anyone," he gasped. "Please, Brooke." "Not yet." She held him close, trembling. "I can't lose you like this." Ridge met her eyes, the flicker of old pride still there. "Then don't watch me fall." The following morning, Ridge disappeared from the mansion. Brooke searched every room, her fear mounting until she found a note left on his drafting table. "Don't look for me. I need to remember who I am before this disease takes it from me." He had gone to the desert, the place where he always went when he needed clarity. Days passed before he returned. When he did, he was thinner, paler but calm. He told Brooke he had made a decision. He would tell the family the truth. The confession tore through the Forresters like an earthquake. Steffi broke down. Thomas stood in stunned silence, and Eric, the father Ridge had once thought too proud to understand, simply took his son's hand and said, "You should have told me sooner." From that day on, everything changed. Ridge began treatment, though the doctors warned that recovery was uncertain. Brooke stayed by his side, watching the man she loved fight to reclaim pieces of himself. There were good days, when he would smile and sketch again, and bad days, when the pencil fell from his hand and he looked at her with quiet despair. But she never left. And Forrester Creations, once a symbol of ambition, became something else entirely, a testament to resilience. Steffi and Thomas stepped into leadership with their father's guidance, honoring both his legacy and his struggle. Brooke found strength in the small victories, a clear morning, a steady hand, a rare laugh. She realized that love was not about saving someone from their suffering, but walking through it with them, even when it broke you. In the end, Ridge's illness did not destroy them. It revealed them. It stripped away pride, pretense, and all the fragile illusions of perfection they had built. What remained was something raw, imperfect, and deeply human. And though the future of Forrester Creations hung in delicate balance, one truth endured, that love, when tested by fear, becomes not weaker, but infinitely more real. The sun rose gently over Los Angeles, casting a soft gold light over the world of the Forresters, Logans, and Sharps, three families bound together by blood, fashion, and a history of wounds that never fully healed. The air that morning carried an uneasy stillness, as if the city itself sensed that love, pride, and heartbreak were about to collide once again. Inside Il Giardino, Deacon Sharp stood alone before the espresso machine, his hands trembling slightly as he poured a cup of coffee. The warmth of the steam was no comfort. He had rehearsed this conversation 100 times in his head, but no amount of preparation could soften the truth he was about to deliver. Sheila Carter Sharp, the woman who had clawed her way through madness, guilt, and rejection to stand beside him, would soon hear that she was banned from attending his daughter's wedding. Sheila had been radiant with anticipation for days, her energy uncontainable as she planned the outfit she would wear, the hairstyle, even the kind of perfume that would make a subtle but unforgettable impression. She spoke endlessly about Hope Logan and Liam Spencer, imagining herself among the guests, smiling at her husband's daughter, finally accepted, finally seen as something other than a villain. Deacon had smiled and nodded, letting her dream, but each time he looked into her hopeful eyes, his guilt deepened. He had promised himself that he would protect her, that he would never again let anyone make her feel small or unwanted. But how could he protect her from this, from the truth that his own daughter did not want her there? When Sheila walked into Il Giardino that morning, The sunlight caught her auburn hair and the faint sparkle of tears she didn't yet know she would shed. She carried a soft smile, fragile, almost childlike, that made Deacon's chest tighten. "You look like a man with something on his mind," she teased gently, sliding into the chair across from him. Her laughter died when she saw his expression. He didn't answer right away. He couldn't. The silence between them stretched, heavy and foreboding, until she whispered, "What is it, Deacon?" He took a slow breath and told her. Told her that Hope had decided she didn't want her at the wedding, that Liam had agreed, and that even Beth, sweet innocent Beth, had asked not to have Sheila there. He explained that it wasn't personal, though they both knew it was. He said it was about peace, about not causing discomfort on what was meant to be a perfect day. But the more he spoke, the smaller Sheila seemed to become, her shoulders curling inward as if she were trying to protect herself from invisible blows. Her lips trembled when she tried to respond, but no words came. The realization hit her slowly, then all at once. No matter what she did, no matter how much she tried to change, she would always be on the outside. They would always see her as the woman who had caused chaos, who had hurt too many people, who didn't deserve forgiveness. Her heart, so stubbornly hopeful, cracked under the weight of rejection. Deacon reached for her hand, but she pulled away, her eyes glistening with disbelief and anger. "They'll never let me be happy," she finally said, her voice breaking. "Not even for one day." Deacon's throat tightened. He wanted to promise her that it would be different someday, but he couldn't lie to her anymore. "It's their wedding, Sheila," he murmured, his voice thick with shame. "We can't take that from them." The words tasted like betrayal. He knew it, and so did she. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The noise of the restaurant faded, leaving only the hollow thud of two hearts breaking quietly in the corner booth. When Sheila finally stood up, her movements were slow, deliberate. Her face was calm, but her eyes were distant, a storm gathering far beneath the surface. She kissed Deacon's forehead gently, almost tenderly, before whispering, "I just wanted to belong." Then she walked out, leaving the faint scent of her perfume behind like a ghost. Meanwhile, across town, Hope Logan and Liam Spencer were blissfully unaware of the devastation their decision had caused. Their home was filled with the hum of preparations, florists, caterers, laughter, and the hopeful energy of new beginnings. Hope stood before the mirror in her dressing room, smoothing the silk of her wedding gown, her face glowing with quiet excitement. Liam entered with a soft smile, his eyes lighting up as he watched her. For a moment, everything was perfect, almost too perfect. But beneath Hope's smile, there was an uneasiness she couldn't quite name. She knew that excluding Sheila had hurt her father, even if it was the right choice. Deacon had worked so hard to rebuild his life, to prove that he was more than the mistakes of his past. And now, she had put him in an impossible position, torn between the daughter he loved and the woman he believed in. Still, Hope told herself that peace was more important than guilt. This day was supposed to be about love and family, not fear and tension. As Hope and Liam talked about the final details, the vows, the music, the guests, their conversation shifted toward another shadow hanging over them, Eric Forrester's forced retirement. Hope frowned as she pinned a white rose into Liam's boutonniere. "It just doesn't feel right," she said softly. "He built Forrester Creations from nothing. He doesn't deserve to be pushed out like this." Liam agreed, but neither of them could change what Ridge had decided. At that very moment, in the grand Forrester mansion, Ridge Forrester stood in his father's study, staring at the sketches scattered across the desk. They were breathtaking, flowing lines, timeless designs, the mark of a genius still very much alive. Yet they were also symbols of a battle Ridge thought he had already won. He had convinced himself that forcing Eric into retirement was the right thing, that it was about protecting his father's health, not seizing control. But now, seeing the brilliance of Eric's final work, doubt began to gnaw at him. When Brooke Logan Forrester entered the room, her eyes were filled with concern. She had seen the tension building for weeks, the quiet resentment in Eric's eyes, the exhaustion in Ridge's face, the unspoken guilt that hung between them. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly, stepping closer. Ridge didn't look at her. "I did what I had to do," he replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Brooke's hand brushed his arm gently. "You did what you thought was right," she said, "but that doesn't make it any easier to live with." Across the hall, Steffi Forrester Finnegan lingered outside Eric's room, clutching the folder of sketches she had discovered. Her grandfather had asked her not to tell anyone about them, but she couldn't keep the secret any longer. When she entered, Eric was sitting by the window, staring out at the garden where generations of Forresters had celebrated their triumphs. His eyes were tired but fierce. "You shouldn't have seen those," he said softly, not unkindly. "I couldn't help it," Steffi admitted. "They're incredible. You still have so much to give, Granddad." Eric smiled faintly. "Maybe. But sometimes it's not about what you have left to give. It's about knowing when the world doesn't want to take it anymore." Later, when Steffi found Ridge in the office, she hesitated only a moment before showing him the designs. His breath caught. For the first time, he realized what he had truly done, not just to a man but to a legacy. The tension in his jaw softened, replaced by something raw and human: remorse. He had been so focused on control that he'd forgotten the soul behind the empire. That evening, as twilight fell over Los Angeles, the three storylines, Sheila's heartbreak, Hope's wedding, and Eric's decline, began to intertwine in a symphony of loss and reflection. Deacon returned home to find the apartment dark and empty. Sheila's belongings were still there, but the woman herself was gone. He sat on the couch, the silence pressing down like a physical weight. On the table lay a note, written in her sharp, elegant hand. "Don't wait for me. I'll find a place where I'm wanted." He closed his eyes, fighting back tears. He had wanted to believe that love could heal her, that being with him would redeem them both. But now he saw that love, without acceptance, was just another prison. Meanwhile, at Forrester Creations, Ridge sat alone in his office, the sketches spread before him like ghosts. Brooke entered quietly and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You need to talk to him," she whispered. "Before it's too late." Ridge nodded, though he didn't move. Pride and fear warred inside him. He wanted to fix it, to make things right, but he didn't know how. At the same time, Hope's wedding unfolded in a burst of light and music. Guests filled the garden, laughter spilling through the air as Hope walked down the aisle toward Liam. Yet as the vows began, a strange heaviness settled over her heart. She glanced at the empty seat where Deacon should have been sitting beside Sheila, and for a brief moment, she wondered if she had made a mistake. Deacon did arrive alone, late, and visibly shaken. When their eyes met, Hope saw the guilt etched into his face. But she also saw love, the kind of love that sacrifices everything quietly, without fanfare. When the ceremony ended, she found him standing apart from the crowd. She hugged him tightly, and for a moment neither spoke. The past, the pain, the decisions, all of it hung between them like a ghost neither could banish. That night, as the city lights glimmered across the hills, everyone found themselves at a crossroads. Sheila, standing on a lonely highway outside Los Angeles, stared at the horizon, her future uncertain. Ridge, in his father's office, finally knelt beside Eric's chair, whispering the apology he had been too proud to give. Brooke watched them from the doorway, tears in her eyes, realizing that love, in all its flawed, painful, beautiful forms, was both their curse and their salvation. And in another corner of the city, Deacon sat by his window, the wedding behind him, his heart heavy with regret but also with hope. Because even in her absence, Sheila's presence lingered, a reminder that redemption is never simple, that sometimes love doesn't heal, but it changes you, reshapes you into someone capable of forgiveness. As dawn crept once more over Los Angeles, the world of the bold and the beautiful stirred awake, fractured, flawed, but still reaching for grace. Brooke turned toward Ridge, who slept uneasily beside her, and whispered a prayer for peace, not just for them, but for all the souls bound by love and consequence in their tangled world. because in the end, it wasn't perfection that kept them alive. It was the constant, imperfect struggle to begin again.